It started with little things that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle with unease. Jessica had always been a bit forgetful when it came to keeping her phone charged, but suddenly it seemed like her battery was dead constantly. Whenever I entered a room, her phone would swivel to face down on the table with a suspicious quickness. Our once effortless conversations became clipped, as if she was holding something back, her mind somewhere else. At first, I tried to brush it off as paranoia. We'd been together for over a decade since we were starry-eyed college sweethearts. Sure, the passion had cooled some as the years went on and we settled into comfortable routines, but we were still steadfastly devoted to each other, or so I thought. Jessica was the love of my life, my high school sweetheart who I had somehow been blessed to spend my adulthood with. She started going out more frequently with her high school friends, a tight-knit clique of women who had boundless inside jokes and stories from their glory days that I was forever excluded from. I didn't think much of it at the time, happy for Jess to maintain those links to her youth. Looking back, I should have been more attuned to her behavior after those raucous nights of bar hopping down memory lane. There was a noticeable shift after her 20th high school reunion, like someone had flipped a switch. Jessica became cagey in a way that went beyond just distancing. She was flat-out evasive, picking immature fights over nothing before retreating to spend long stretches alone, working on her laptop or zoning out on her phone. I stumbled across an incriminating Instagram message from one of her old cheerleader friends about how crazy the weekend was and who would have thought. But Jessica dismissed it as innocent inside jokes. My doubts metastasized after she made plans to grab drinks with an old ex from those high school days, brushing it off as just catching up. The strained smiles and antsy body language whenever she got home from those meetups screamed of awkwardness with someone who should be water under the bridge. More than once, I caught her blushing and hiding her phone like a teenager, insisting the racy videos were just dumb filters her friends were playing around with. I knew the signs of cheating from stories friends had unloaded after being burned themselves. The phone guarding, erosion of intimacy, suspicious time periods unaccounted for. But Jessica kept feeding me placating reassurances laced with enough plausible deniability to make me feel like the untrusting, insecure one for letting my mind go to those dark spaces. I figured I was just letting my deepest, most primal fears make me paranoid. After all, this was the woman I had waited most of my life for. That fateful night changed everything. With Jessica away at yet another high school reunion after party, I finally decided to take the fateful step of installing hidden monitoring software on our home computer. I kept telling myself the entire time that my doubts were almost certainly misplaced, that this was just a one-time thing to put my irrational fears to bed once and for all. Deep down, however, a small voice inside knew I should brace for impact. I stayed up all night, heartsick, as gigabyte after gigabyte of incriminating evidence rendered in crystal clarity across my screen. Sexting convos, explicit videos and photos, even video call recordings. It was all there. Receipts of Jessica's torrid affair streamed in raw 4K detail. My wife, the woman I had devoted over half my life, loving unconditionally, had meticulously and unrepentantly cuckolded me. I felt like vomiting as I read her descriptions of our sex life as being ho-hum and unfulfilling, only being with me because of our family and her fear of upheaval in our comfortable lives. Worst of all were the cruel taunts she unleashed on me behind my back to her side-piece lover. The taunts and degrading insults she flung my way in those chat logs were what really made my stomach turn into sickening knots. It wasn't just the graphic details of the forbidden sexual acts Jessica enthusiastically described performing with her affair partner. The mind movies of imagining her being intimately violated by another man were painful enough. No. It was the sadistic relish with which she mocked and humiliated me to this faceless homewrecker that cut me deepest. Jessica's words dripped with disdain as she laughed about my apparent inadequacies in bed, making cruel jabs about my manhood and sexual prowess that would make any man feel emasculated and subhuman. Matt's got a way bigger dick than my sorry excuse for a husband, LOL. I can actually feel it stretch me out instead of the unsatisfying poke from Bob's lil guy, she typed out brazenly in one message thread. In another, she attached a short video clip that made me want to cry out in anguished humiliation. It was Jessica giving a lewd, enthusiastic look direct to the camera before panning down to slowly stroke her lover's engorged member. "This is what a real man's cock looks like. Not that pathetic excuse for a penis my husband is packin'." She giggled like a naughty schoolgirl getting off on the taboo betrayal. I read in disbelief as she mercilessly tore into other intimate aspects of our relationship, leaving no areas of our bedroom untouched by her scathing critiques. Everything I had been led to believe was acts of passionate lovemaking between a committed couple was apparently just me being a selfish, incompetent lover to Jessica's discerning eyes. She mocked my oral skills as neglectful, my stamina as subpar, my romantic gestures as childishly basic and pedestrian. Matt's talented hands, tongue, and dick game are literally from another universe compared to Bob's, she gushed to her online lover over video chat, sticking out her tongue and making a gagging gesture implying I was hopeless in that arena. "I've been faking orgasms for years just to spare his feelings as a man. You're the first person who's ever made me legitimately cry out in ecstasy, babe." On and on, the examples of Jessica's depraved treachery went. Casual discussions of our most private, intimate moments were stripped bare and put on display. Every ounce of vulnerability and intimacy I had ever shown her trafficked out for cheap laughs. My masculine self-worth was shattered into pieces by the verbal onslaught of derisive name-calling and profane insults about my lovemaking talents. But perhaps the most hurtful messages were the ones where Jessica contemplated outright leaving me for her soulmate Matt. She poured out shockingly cruel diatribes about the sheer contempt she had come to feel for me as a partner, saying I was little more than an uninspiring, domesticated oaf she had settled for out of societal obligation and fear of change. "Matt, you've awoken feelings and passions in me I had legitimately forgotten existed. Bob is just blah. A boring, safe, nice guy I married by default out of comfort. But you're the electrifying, passionate man I was always meant to be with, who treats me like a living, breathing sexual goddess instead of a roommate," she typed out feverishly. "If it wasn't for the kids, I'd leave his lame ass in a heartbeat to finally be happy and fulfilled for once in my life." Reading that made me feel like I had been hollowed out from the inside. Over a decade of marriage, of being a devoted partner, and Jessica viewed me as little more than a safe fallback, a consolation prize she was already fantasizing about discarding like yesterday's trash for her rejuvenated high school flame. The pit of anguish I felt in that moment is honestly indescribable. As more and more revelations about the depths of her deception piled up in front of me, an anger began burning deep inside that I had never known before. The anger I felt rapidly built into an all-consuming rage, the likes of which I had never experienced before. It started as a slow burn in the pit of my stomach after reading Jessica's cruel taunts and casual discussions about leaving me. But as I kept digging through the trove of incriminating evidence, the flames were continually stoked higher and higher. There were video recordings of Jessica engaged in video chat sessions with her lover Matt, sessions that started out seemingly innocent before escalating into something much more depraved. I watched with morbid disgust as they undressed and engaged in aggressive cybersex, my wife looking directly into the camera lens as she masturbed for her online paramour's viewing pleasure. "You like watching me play with myself, you dirty boy?" Jessica purred in that breathy bedroom voice I had only ever heard directed at me behind closed doors. Just imagine all the other places I want your thick cock instead of just my fingers." She propped her laptop up on the dresser, giving Matt the perfect angle to see every lascivious lick of her fingers, the lewd spread of her most intimate areas. I felt like a voyeur watching something deeply private, my eyes involuntarily glued to the screen as she put on an extremely explicit solo exhibition. Part of me couldn't believe this was the same woman I had reenacted those cheesy rom-com bedroom scenes with mere months ago, that laughed in embarrassment whenever we tried a new adventurous position. Here she was acting like a porn star, utterly uninhibited in a way I had never seen as she slurred profanities about wanting Matt to use her in the most luridly graphic ways imaginable. There were hundreds of raunchy photos and short video clips that Jessica had taken of herself dolled up in skimpy lingerie sets and sexy poses I had no idea she was capable of. The coital visuals were one thing to process, but it was the flirty captions and emoji-laced messages attached to them, where she gushed about finally feeling sexy and desired again, that cut deepest. My dumbass husband hasn't gotten an impromptu hot photo of me like this in years. He doesn't deserve this total smoke show you get to indulge in, read one text exchange as Jessica posed, sprawled out in nothing but sheer stockings and a lacy push-up bra that accentuated her curves in a way designed to turn a man feral. In another message thread, I discovered she had surreptitiously taken a hotel room local to our city and decorated it in kitschy adult entertainment set dressings like scented candles and rose petals strewn about the bed. Needless to say, the subsequent barrage of selfies revealed she had played out every lusty fantasy of roleplay and public kink imaginable in that seedy room, from setting up a tripod to record steamy strip teases to using the curtain rods as stripper poles when she got herself properly in the mood. Can't wait to show you all the hot content I captured of me being the biggest slut for you in this room later, Daddy. One disturbing caption read alongside a spread of daring preview photos I dared not open on my work computer. My dumbass, oblivious husband is home clueless, keeping the kids occupied while mommy did her best porn audition just for her secret lover. Seeing those images and home movies of Jessica utterly abandoning her inhibitions for this other man's pleasure, it was like being doused in ice water. The sense of heartbroken devastation was so absolute, I began frantically downloading and archiving every single file onto an external hard drive like a deranged computer hoarder. It was cathartic in a way, gaining full possession over proof of my wife's depraved sexual antics. My mind raced with ideas of how to properly confront her with the damning evidence, as her innocuous text alerts kept pinging on her still dark phone screen lying on the kitchen counter. As the sun began rising outside and the harsh new reality seeped into my consciousness, a vile sense of vengeance began to overtake me. If this was how Jessica wanted to discard years of marital loyalty in exchange for cheap sexual thrills, then she would have to suffer the mortifying consequences. As the sun began peeking through the curtains, I sat in a stupor staring at the haunting collage of evidence I had amassed overnight. Video clips, photo reels, archived chat logs, a devastating museum of proof documenting Jessica's lurid infidelities in lurid detail. Part of me couldn't believe this was the same woman I had built a life and family with, who had seemed so grounded and faithful for over a decade of marriage. Yet here was the indisputable truth, scorching my eyeballs and shattering what was left of my naive reality. The remorseless way she debased our entire relationship to Matt, the cruel and vulgar words she used to mock me as a punching bag for her litany of grievances about our sex life. It was one of the most emasculating, dehumanizing experiences I had ever gone through as a man. As the fog of heartbreak began lifting, a newfound rage took possession of my soul. Jessica had not just physically betrayed me, but went through systematic efforts to utterly annihilate my sense of self-respect and masculine identity. She relished in cuckolding me emotionally and psychologically before ever crossing the final sexual Rubicon. The distraught part of me wanted to run to her with the treasure trove of dirty secrets, to beg and plead for an explanation that could somehow make sense of the nightmare my life had become. But the more I reread her callous messages, carelessly discarding me as a soulless, inadequate partner, the more I realized how futile that would be. This wasn't just a one-time indiscretion to be ashamed of. This was a months-long descent into a dark, soulless pit of disrespect and infidelity that Jessica had willingly thrown herself into without an ounce of regret. As the familiar guilt and shame tried wrestling for control of my emotions, an unprecedented wave of vengeful externalization washed over me instead. If Jessica was so hell-bent on painting me as a pathetic, inadequate loser to gain her ego boosts from Matt, then I would play actress and give her sordid betrayal the very public exposure she so desperately craved. With a few Google searches, I had bought a minimalist website domain and began feverishly coding a digital museum to catalog and exhibit Jessica's wanton infidelities for all to gape at. It started off basic at first, just uploading the most salacious photo-video evidence with generic file names like cheating wife playing with her toy, MP4. But as the hurt and vengeance continued curdling inside me, I couldn't resist the urge to turn the knife with degrading hostility to match Jessica's own venom. "See your stuck-up suburban soccer mom MILF neighbor give a naughty camgirl showcase for her online fuck buddy while the kids play video games down the hall," I typed out with aroused breaths for one tantalizing video preview clip's description. "The lying whore is so good at putting on an X-rated performance for men who aren't her sad sack of a husband." Another gallery of text logs detailing Jessica's shameless ego-stroking of Matt's physical features over mine received the mocking title, "The piping hot goss your cheating wife shares with her lover about your lil dick and useless tongue game." I went through each exhibit with sadistic glee, annotating and contextualizing the imagery to create an inescapable digital evisceration, publicizing every last one of Jessica's sordid lies and treachery against me. There was something perversely cathartic about twisting the knife right back into her, to give her the same mocking humiliation she had gleefully dealt me behind my back for months on end. As hours of maniacal labor continued coding and updating the trove of content, only one question remained: how to get the grand unveiling of Jessica's magnum falcius the widespread exposure it deserved. A simple social media upload could quickly get buried or forgotten amidst the incessant onslaught of digital stimuli. No, her debasement demanded a more aggressive proliferation campaign. That's when I got the idea to make things nice and personal. Ultimately, after months of gut-wrenching counseling sessions, Jessica and I realized we had arrived at a crossroads in our marriage. On one path was an arduous journey to rebuild the foundation of trust and intimacy she had detonated through her premeditated deceptions. The other led towards an amicable but permanent separation that could allow us to eventually heal and move forward, albeit on divergent paths. It became clear that while forgiveness was possible, the breach of faith and violation of trust was too seismic to fully overcome. Jessica had done the difficult work of accepting full accountability, expressing profound remorse, and trying to earn back the unconditional devotion she had so selfishly discarded. However, my anger and feelings of emasculation from her cruel actions had hardened into a resigned sadness that our once blissfully naive marriage was irreparably shattered. In a particularly emotional session, our counselor compassionately advised, "The betrayal destroyed the marriage, but it doesn't have to destroy you as individuals or your ability to be good co-parents if you have children. With intentional work on self-compassion, an amicable separation can happen that allows you both to eventually heal and move forward." With a heavy heart, Jessica and I decided that despite her efforts, too much damage had been inflicted on the trust and intimacy required for a healthy marriage to resume. We began the arduous process of separating our lives, discussing asset divisions, filing divorce paperwork, and making the painful transition into non-marital life. The most difficult part was breaking the news to our two young children and committing to co-parenting with purpose for their well-being. It took a couple of months, but eventually the dull ache of the separation gave way to an ability to coexist as ships passing in parallel lives. The blazing anger, resentment, and hurt gradually extinguished into acceptance. While Jessica and I would never be able to resume the passionate union we once had, we did find an uneasy peace and equanimity handling co-parenting and occasional social crossover. Looking back, I have no regrets about taking the high road in responding to her infidelity. As insanely tempting as it was to try and settle the scales through humiliating retaliation, I know I protected my own integrity and self-respect by choosing ethical accountability over hassling mutually assured destruction. It wasn't easy, but I drew strength from steadfastly clinging to empathy and wisdom, which allowed me to eventually confront this agonizing betrayal through proper channels and avoid having it poison me permanently. The intimate partnership Jessica and I once had could not be resurrected, no matter how remorseful she seemed. However, we were able to eventually forge a new context of showing up as caring, respectful co-parents to our children. They didn't have to grow up witnessing one of us being dehumanized or suffering from emotional neglect due to our inability to uphold boundaries. The road was long, and at times it felt like the pain would never end. Though our marriage could not survive Jessica's wounding betrayal, I was able to walk away with the self-respect and peace of mind that I had done the right thing, even when feeling justified rage.